All right, on the surface, tech companies appear to be fighting back against NSA snooping. But you know what? If you dig a little deeper, you might come up with a different opinion because a trade group representing Microsoft and Google and the like just gave NSA head General Keith Alexander the, quote, Government Executive of the Year award for this year. Imogen thinks this is one weird way to express disappointment. And we're back with Peter Suderman and Ron Meyer as well. Imogen.
Oh, for goodness sake, Silicon Valley are in bed with the government. The former head of Facebook security now works for the NSA. And you just look at those lobbying numbers. Facebook money spent on lobbying up 196% last year. They want the government on side.
You know, here's the thing, Ron Meyer. I mean, the Google and Facebook and Microsoft, they're saying, you know what, this is terrible. We're getting pressured by the U.S. government to give information over. But here you have one of the biggest tech lobby groups giving an award to the NSA. And I'm wondering, is the tech crowd, is Silicon Valley becoming more like Wall Street with the turnstile between Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C., Ron Meyer?
Well, it makes business sense for them to do it, unfortunately, and that's the problem. We have a government who's willing to work with them.
Why all the shocked, the Claude Rains routine from Casablanca on the part of the tech crowd when they're doing this on the side in D.C.? Go ahead.
You're talking about two different parts of the company. One's the PR side talking to the customers. One's the lobbying side talking to the government. The problem is they don't want people to think that that's what they're doing, but that's what they are. And frankly, from a consumer perspective, this really worries me. I think especially young people are furious over this, that we have some of the companies we trust with some of our most private information working with the government and allowing them to do these large general warrants.
Peter Suderman, does this undercut the tech crowd's credibility?
I think those big tech companies, especially Google and Facebook, are really in a tough position because they've got to ask themselves, is it more trouble to work with the federal government or is it more trouble
No, that's not
to
the question. Wait, hang on. That's not my question. That's not my question, Peter Suderman. Does it undercut their credibility when the tech lobby is giving an award to the head of the NSA? And as Imogen points out, we've got a turnstile between Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C., certainly with law enforcement and the surveillance crowd. Go ahead. Does it undercut their credibility?
You know, certainly it doesn't make it easier for them, but that's my point here.
You're still not answering the question. Does it undercut their credibility?
It doesn't make it easier for them to oppose these sorts of government efforts. So in some ways, it has the potential to do so. But this is what I'm trying to say is they've got a tough choice to make. And so, you know, when the federal government comes knocking on their door, they've got to decide, do we answer or do we not? Microsoft had to make that decision in the 1990s. Does it undercut their credibility
when they're getting so upset? Does it undercut their credibility what they're doing that we didn't know about? Go ahead.
Of course it does, but I think on many levels we sort of expected it. I mean, certainly was Prism that because surprised you that the US government had that amount of information on us?
We knew about this was going on, but go ahead.
Exactly, we pretty much knew about it. The big problem, of course, here is money in politics. American politicians spent over $7 billion last year getting themselves re-elected. They had to raise that $7 billion. They have to get it from somewhere. They get it from big business, and a lot of that money is now coming from Silicon Valley.
$7 billion is a big number. But, you know, Ron, here's the question. Here's another thing. I'm thinking, you know what, could the tech crowd have avoided all this? And Peter, I'm going to come back to you. I didn't mean to give you a hard time. But could the tech crowd have gone around this and said, you know what, we're just going to, like we sell our information to advertisers, the tech crowd makes a lot of money marketing, from giving information to marketers, giving our information to marketers. Could the tech crowd have just said, you know what, we're going to get around this and sold the information to the government, just sell it, make money off of it? Go ahead.
Well, I think that would certainly have been a more open process. I mean, I think if it might actually make people read the terms of agreement when you join these sites, right? If you actually know that your information is going to the government. I feel like users don't know that, and so I feel like that would certainly be a more open process. I'm not sure it'd make me feel more at home at Google or Facebook that they're doing that.
All right, Peter, I put you in a corner just like you were saying. The tech crowd is feeling put in a corner, too. I didn't mean to, but go ahead. You have your say. Take it.
I mean, with the question of whether or not they could have sold it, you also have to ask whether the federal government would have been willing to pay for it. The big issue is that the tech community has learned that it's very difficult to ignore the requests of the federal government, if you can call them requests. In many cases, they're demands.
But why
Microsoft tried in the 1990s and eventually found out that it was easier to play ball.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but why couldn't the tech crowd have said, you know what, we're not just going to give this information over. You can, you know, stomp your feet all you like. We're going to sell it to you. Couldn't they have done that?
Maybe it's possible, but again, whether the federal government would have paid.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, you know, Ron, about the FISA court. But you know what? Listen, I understand the weight and authority of the FISA court. I get it. But you know what? These aren't, you know, the lilies of the valley here are shrinking violets. They're big companies, and they're just going to buckle underneath the FISA court order. I get it. I understand they have to comply. I understand that. But do you feel like they could have put up more of a fight?
I think it's a total double standard, especially when you had Google, rightfully so, opposing the internet regulation bills last year, and now that they won't. I mean, they're grassrootsy, and they're the companies of the people when it looks good for them. But then when it's also good for them to be in with the government, they are.
I hear what you're saying.
And so I think they're losing a ton of credibility.
Imogen, go ahead.
These companies want the government on side for tax, they want the government on side for antitrust legislation, for legislation on privacy, on legislation on data mining. Of course they're not going to turn around to the government and say, go away. It's not going to happen.
So you're saying that they can't basically poison the well of goodwill, whatever it is, between them and the government. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that they need the government on side. They'll do what the government wants.
Too.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, you know what, Peter, you're going to have the final word. Go ahead.
I guess I just feel like, you know, it's too much to it may be too much to expect Facebook and Google to really put up a huge amount of resistance, given their relationship with the federal government.
All right.
Given what the federal government can do to them.
All right, final word. Thanks for watching, America. I hope you have a good evening.